This is AM Agenda. Thanks for your company this morning. Joining me now, Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg and Labor MP Nick Champion. Gents, good morning to you. Let's go straight to the power debate. Nick, the Prime Minister blames the poles and wires upgrade for additional costs in state in the various states. Now, let's be upfront and transparent about this. It's about deflecting criticism from the carbon tax, isn't it? This strategy.
Well, no, I don't think that's right. The Prime Minister was pretty upfront in her speech about the carbon price and its impacts on electricity. We've always been upfront about it, but what we're trying to do is have a broader discussion about the national electricity market and the reasons behind the rises in electricity and what we might do about it. And I think we're trying to do that in a cooperative way in the first instance. So we're saying to state governments, and indeed to the energy sector, look, we want to work with you to make sure we've got a national electricity market that actually works for consumers as well as all the other participants in it. And that's pretty important because we know every politician, regardless of their political stripes, knows that power prices are a big issue. They've been a big issue under both Labor and Liberal state governments. And if it continues to go on...
That's the point. That's the nub of the point I was making. Labor governments are responsible. Why is it now, just when the federal government's going to cop flack over the carbon tax, that the Prime Minister's decided to raise it?
Well, with all due respect, state treasurers are all pretty much alike, whether they're Labor or Liberal, when it comes to getting money out of state-owned enterprises. I don't think that there's anything new about that. But what we're trying to do is work with the state premiers, both Labor and Liberal, and get a national electricity market that works. And what that involves is obviously empowering consumers. It involves putting in place a smart grid, an intelligent grid that can, utilise technology to lower power prices, and also making sure that we don't have state-owned enterprises and privately run companies gold-plating infrastructure.
Yes, but this was happening under Labor governments. This was happening under Labor governments in New South Wales, for example. And why now? Why raise it now when there's Liberal administrations there?
Well, Kieran, there's a Labor government in my state. They're being treated exactly the same as state governments everywhere else. This is not really a politically partisan issue. It's really an issue about getting a national electricity market that works and making sure that it works for consumers. And the Prime Minister, I think, was pretty reasonable in her speech. She said she wants to work with the state governments to put in place changes so that that consumers might get some relief in the medium term. I don't think there's anything reasonable about that. It's not like we announced massive amounts of regulation to come in overnight. What we announced is a pretty sensible, moderate approach. Well, okay. we announced a sensible, moderate approach, dealing with state premiers, and you would think that state premiers would want lower power prices as well.
I want to go to Josh. Josh, isn't it true that the states have been responsible for gold plating the poles and wires and reaping more revenue as part of that?
No, it's not. And as a result of energy prices going up in the state levels, all of those have been ticked off by the Commonwealth Energy Regulator. But, Kieran, what I can't understand about this Gillard government is it always seeks to blame someone else. Just the other day, you had Wayne Swan out there blaming Gina Rinehart and Twiggy Forrest for our falling productivity. Now you've got the Prime Minister out there blaming the states for the carbon tax and the rising electricity costs.
But how can you say that it's not true? But tell me, how do you explain that very point that I began with? You could go on with those other arguments, but on the states upgrading infrastructure, that is the big part of the near 70% increase in power prices that we've seen over the last 4 years in New South Wales alone. How do you say that's not the case?
Well, there's a whole lot of federal schemes in terms of solar schemes and elsewhere that have actually contributed to the price rises. So it's not just the infrastructure cost. But the reality is, of the 18.5% increase in electricity in New South Wales in this year, over half of that is coming from the carbon tax. And the carbon tax starts at $23, goes to $37, and hits a peak of $350 per tonne. Now, that's just going to lead to an escalator in terms terms of the electricity prices. So it's fine for Nick to say, oh, you know, we're not threatening or intimidating the states. We want to work hand in hand with them. But the truth is, the biggest impost on electricity prices is the carbon tax, and we're promising to repair.
For, isn't it?
No, but it's not being compensated for. No, it's not being compensated for, Kieran. To be really fair, putting a bit of money into some households' pockets doesn't make up for the disincentive for small businesses to employ people, for all the investment that goes offshore as a result of the higher cost of doing business and the carbon tax. In the Prime Minister's own electorate, Kieran, there was a methanol plant that was planned that was going to deliver $1.5 billion of export income to this country, which was abandoned, the chairman said, because of the carbon tax. And that is an experience that is writ large right around the economy.
Okay,
this is a distraction. This is an absolute distraction.
Okay, well, I'll put that to Nick Champion, and in addition to what Josh said there, something that Tony Abbott said yesterday, if the Prime Minister was serious about empathising with people's power costs, why not at least put the tax on hold? I think many in your own side believe it should be lowered, the starting price.
Well, look, the prices.
Are you really
going
to empathise with people?
Well, Kieran, the prices come in, the sky hasn't fallen, and people have been compensated for the price impacts, particularly those people on lower and fixed incomes. But what they have had is 4 years or so of rising electricity costs, and they haven't been rising because of the carbon price, they've been rising because of these other complex factors. And some of these factors are legitimate and reasonable. They're the costs of replacing poles and wires and the like, and some of them are gold plating of infrastructure and profit taking. Now, I guess we're trying to have a complex policy argument about these and about how we might best reform the national electricity market. And what you hear from Josh and the Liberals is this constant personalising of every issue. So whenever we come to discuss climate change, oh, it's all Julia Gillard's fault. Whenever we come to talk about electricity prices, it's all Julia Gillard's fault. And it's this constant
no carbon
vicious...
tax under a government I lead. No carbon tax under a government I lead.
Josh, I listen to you. I listen for
longer to you, Nick.
And you're interrupting with the exact same personalising, the exact same vicious personalising of every issue. That's your interjection. Rather than having a decent policy conversation, which you can't do because your leader doesn't have any policies, right? You have to personalise every issue. Oh, Julia Gillard this, Julia Gillard that. Just once I'd like to debate a Liberal where they actually debated the policy issue and not the personal issue.
Let's talk about it. Okay, well, can I just say, Kieran,
to Josh finally,
can I just say, Nick Champion, in his own words, he has described the Labor caucus as Craven and Callow. He's talked about an electoral tsunami coming his way, and now we hear him trying to defend Julia Gillard. That's a very poor effort. This is a distraction. The truth is the carbon tax has come in on July 1st, and households have not yet got their third quarter energy bills with the carbon tax, and it's over 10%. Now, that's going to be a huge impost on households, a huge impost on small businesses, and it's going to be a disincentive to investment.
All right, let's move on. There are two other issues I want to get to this morning. To Josh first on this story by James Massola in the Financial Review this morning. And James reports that the Liberal Party in the seat of Lyne, that's Rob Oakeshot's seat, is going to defy the leader. Mr Abbott's endorsed his very good friend, David Gillespie, the Nationals candidate. I think he was even best man at the wedding, at Mr Abbott's wedding, so very close. But the Liberals there are going to pre-select Matt Adamson, the former rugby league player who hails from that area, as their candidate. So it'll be a three-way contest. That won't benefit the coalition cause, will it?
Well, I think firstly you've got to point out, Kieran, to be fair, that no decisions have been made about pre-selections. And you know, having gone through that pre-selection process myself, that is very much a decision in the hands of the party members themselves and the administrative wing of the party. So no decisions have been made. Now, whoever is selected as a candidate, whoever runs in that seat, whoever wins that seat, we want to make sure it's a coalition member, because Rob Oakeshott has been part and parcel of this horrific Gillard government. The fact it's a minority government relying on the vote of Rob Oakeshott. So we want to see the back of Rob Oakeshott.
But you're well in front in the polls. Is there a risk here that you see these three-cornered contests that actually diminish your chance of winning, that hubris might set in various branches around the place?
Well, let's just leave that to the administrative wing of the party to make the call, because, as I said before, no decisions have been taken, so it would be wrong for me to try to preemptively predict what is actually going to happen there in line.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to the ALP internal issues at the moment. The News Limited papers this morning reporting that the party has asked senior Gillard government staff to contribute to a Labor election fighting fund to donate money. Nick Champion, don't they already give enough? They work 70-hour, 80-hour weeks.
Well, these are requests, they're not demands. And parties fundraise, Josh's party fundraise, the Greens fundraise, Labor fundraise, because of the cost of elections. And every sensible commentator in Australia is concerned about the cost of elections and the sort of need to fundraise. I think it's a phenomenon of modern politics, and we'd probably rather it didn't exist, but parties do have to do it to survive in the modern environment. And I'd just like to comment on the previous issue. The reason why there's so many three-cornered contests going on in rural seats is because what that is a fight for the soul of the coalition, and really we're going to have to wait and see whether what emerges is sort of, you know, the protectionist nationals and a sort of model, or the free trading liberals, and that's what those three-cornered contests are actually really all about. They're about whether or not Barnaby Joyce runs this government.
You've been an administrator within the South Australian Labor Party. Would you ask your staff to chip in?
Look, I think we did on previous occasions. I mean, I don't think it's that big a deal, to be honest with you. You know, I had a letter go out to small businesses in my electorate from Tony Abbott asking for money. You know, I had a couple of small business owners say, "What the hell's this?" But you know, I didn't complain about it because that's just what parties do.
Yeah. Well, that is what parties do, isn't it, Josh? Josh, there were letters out recently from the Liberal Party, unsolicited, to people urging for funds.
Look, hopefully we have an election sooner than later, and both sides will need funds to support those campaigns. But I must say I'm a little surprised, and sounds like Nick is too, that the Labor Party has resorted to these efforts to start, you know, clipping the ticket of their own staff. I mean, look, they've been having their hands in the pockets of the union movement for years and years, to the tune of more than $30 billion in the 2007 election.
So now,
business has supported us to a fraction of what the union movement supports the Labor Party. You know, basically, the Labor Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of the union movement, and it's the union movement which provides all the funding for the Labor Party.
We've got to wrap it up.
So it's a bit desperate now to go to its staff.
We've got to wrap it. I'm sorry, we're out of time. Nick and Josh, we could have done that all day. Thanks, fellas. That's all for AIM Agenda. The news is next.